Obeidallah. He wants to be your Muslim friend.
Most Muslims, I know many, are great people.
Watch this.
People.
You're listening to the Dean Obeidallah Show, where comedy meets politics and all things in between.
And welcome back, Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have back on our friend Jill Wine-Banks, MSNBC legal contributor, author of The Watergate Girl. She was one of the 3 assistant Watergate special prosecutors, host of various podcasts, Sisters-in-Law and iGen Politics. Jill, thanks for making time on this big day, January 6th hearing. I know you were on MS earlier. Thanks for coming on now.
I am always happy to be on your show and to hear your take on things. And I want to be your non-Muslim friend, okay?
No, you don't have to know. I'm here to be your Muslim friend. No, you.
I know.
I got plenty of Muslim friends.
I'm not Muslim, so can I still be your friend?
Of course, you're my BFF. I'll just call you.
Okay, good.
My Watergate BFF. I don't have any other Watergate related BFFs. So, when you watch the hearing today, which is probably the last one, how was it different from just the tone of the Watergate hearings? Like, can you share a little bit about that for us? Were the Watergate hearings more intense, less intense? Was it more at times more academic? What was the big difference that you remember?
Okay, you caught me off guard on that question, but here's my answer: is Watergate was a question and answer to reveal facts. It was an era when facts mattered. Today's hearing was closing arguments. It was putting together previously revealed and some new information as well. But mostly it was just reminding America what the danger was, and to some extent, going beyond the day of January 6th. It included all of the other parts of the scheme to overturn democracy, to overturn the elections. So it included, the fake electors. It included the pressure on state delegations. It included Georgia. It included all of the other elements. Jeffrey Clark and John Eastman, and all of it relating to showing that the president, the former president, was at the center of all of that it was premeditated. I thought the premeditation part was particularly strong, in my opinion, and very persuasive. But Watergate was really just asking questions of witnesses who told the truth and getting the facts out to the people. This was argument. This was put together in a persuasive way. It was facts, but it was different.
And I want to play one clip here. It's a short one. Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren, on that very point about premeditation, and then have you explain for us from a legal point of view, does this go to an intent requirement if Donald Trump is ultimately prosecuted for crime? So let's play clip number 3, please.
This big lie, President Trump's effort to convince Americans that he had won the 2020 election, began before the election results even came in. It was intentional, it was premeditated, it was not based on election results or any evidence of actual fraud affecting the results or any actual problems with voting machines. It was a plan concocted in advance to convince his supporters that he won.
So, Jill, when you hear that, and they laid out evidence, they had Steve Bannon in October of 2020 telling a group that here's what Trump's going to do. You had Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch, who's not even a lawyer, telling Trump in late October just declare victory. There were references to July they were planning this. From a legal point of view, as a former prosecutor, what does that say to you?
Well, first of all, don't forget about Roger Stone, who also was saying the same thing. Just say. And they don't care what the facts are, just say it. And that's good enough. It depends on what crime you're talking about in terms of his knowledge. Lying to the American people, unfortunately, is not a crime.
Right.
As part of campaigns, it's not a crime. If you're under oath, it is. So the fact that he was concocting a lie is in and of itself is probably not indictable. On the other hand, it does fit into another crime, which is it's not free speech if you lie in order to rev up your crowd, to get them to do something illegal. that crosses the line. It's no longer First Amendment protected speech. It is insurrection. It is a crime. So I think when you put together the information they had, including this, but basically, one, he knew he lost. He was told that innumerable times. He admitted that he had lost. He doesn't like admitting it, but he did off camera, so to speak. And so when you put all of that together of what he actually knew, and then he says, and he knew that the crowd was armed and dangerous. He said, they're not going to hurt me. He didn't care that he might hurt other people. And when you put all that together with perpetuating this big lie, premeditated, it gets really, really bad. In the same way, when you hear that he ordered his staff to move documents from the basement to his residence just before the search warrant was executed, that pretty much shows a kind of mindset that means that the Department of Justice cannot ignore indicting him for that crime. It's that extra element that brings it into the Sandy Berger, you get indicted for this.
You're a former federal prosecutor. Based on the evidence you've seen, do you think you can get a conviction of Donald Trump for some crime, either January 6th or the Mar-a-Lago documents?
If there is not a Trump supporter on the jury who lies about being able to judge on the facts, the answer is absolutely. I would have no qualm about it. I've fortunately never had to pick a jury in an era where you have to worry about people believing alternative facts that they cannot be dissuaded from. I think that's one of the biggest problems facing our country. And it's a question that I have asked many guests on my podcast without getting a really satisfactory, compelling answer, which is, how do you reach the people who have bought into this nonsense? They really believe he doesn't. He's lying to, he's lying. He knows he didn't, but they actually believe him because he says it. And so how do you reach those people to say, no, what about the 60 lawsuits that were thrown out? What about the Arizona ninjas that he hired to have them find more votes for him, and they found more for Joe Biden? Oh, I don't believe that. That's a lie from the Democrats, but they believe him. So I don't know how you reach those people. And that's the only risk that you would have. That does not mean you wouldn't indict and go to trial. I'm just saying that I cannot guarantee you, in the way that I would normally feel confident, that I would get a conviction.
I like your odds, though. I want to see Jill Wine-Banks and Glenn Kirshner together prosecuting, maybe Barbara McQuade, the whole team.
Get all of us.
Prosecute Donald Trump.
Yes, absolutely.
That would be fun. And I'm talking with Jill Wine-Banks. So the news that happened before we came on air is that, obviously, they voted to subpoena Donald Trump. And we were discussing earlier, do you think he'd go or not? Well, Maggie Haberman is saying now that Donald Trump said he would go if they let it happen live on TV and have it in front of a hearing with the cameras. What do you think of that? Seriously.
Well, when my husband was at work today, so he wasn't watching the hearing. And when I gave him a review and I said, and they voted to subpoena him. And I said, of course, he's not going to show up. He's going to delay. And my husband said, he is arrogant enough and stupid enough that he thinks he will persuade everybody. And this would be a huge audience if they would put it live. Not, if it's behind closed doors, he's not interested. But if they were willing to do this in public, my husband is convinced that he would show up. And I have to say, I sort of think he's right. And so therefore Maggie Haberman is right. I think he might actually show up and think that he, despite his lawyer's advice to take the fifth, he would never do that. Although he did behind closed doors. And so, yeah. And the other news today was that he created a new company and started transferring assets. Talk about fraud. Oh my God.
We'll talk about that in a second. But so I wonder, because when we were discussing it, when we saw that news that Maggie Haberman is reporting based on sources close to everything, is she knows everyone in the Trump circle, and you wonder if they ask him point blank questions, the people on the panel, knowing it could result in elicit a response that really could incriminate Trump, would he just? I don't think he answers it, because I don't think he can invoke the fifth on national television. How bad would that look? That's the thing. Or could he do it the way he played the games here in New York with the AG? Well, usually I wouldn't invoke the fifth, but you people are so dishonest that I got to invoke the Fifth Amendment here. But I want to tell you, and go to Truth Social. My video will be up later answering this question or something like that, because he's not an idiot. He understands the big game here. Yeah. He gets this. That's the thing. So he's not going to go like, okay, it's not going to be Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men going, you don't want to handle the truth. Yeah, I ordered the Code Red, that type of thing. I just watched that on cable over the weekend. And I'm like,
great
that's
movie.
Not going to happen. It is a great movie. Rob Reiner, the great guy, directed it. So he doesn't. Your husband's right. I think his ego, his narcissism, if he was a Shakespearean character, his tragic flaw is him. It's his ego. And that's what would bring him to go like, yeah, I'm smarter than Adam Schiff. Hey, Shifty Schiff. Unbelievable. By the way,
and I'm smarter than all my lawyers.
Right, and the generals. He knows better than everyone. He's a remarkable person.
Right.
Was there any chance when you were investigating Watergate that you could have subpoenaed Richard Nixon, or as a sitting president that was never going to happen, or in the criminal procedure process that wasn't going to happen because he was a potential target?
Well, no. He was subpoenaed and did testify in a deposition after he resigned and after he had been pardoned. So he did. We did subpoena him for documents, which is different than for testimony, because there's no Fifth Amendment privilege for documents, only for testimony. We discussed, and I was in strong belief that there is no reason not to indict a sitting president when you have adequate evidence of crimes, and we certainly did in Watergate, and there certainly is now. I think a sitting president can be indicted, that the Office of Legal Counsel opinion is incorrect. We also had a second opportunity because he resigned. And in the days before he got pardoned, we could have indicted him as an ordinary U.S. citizen. He was the ex-president. It would not have affected. Leon's argument was, one, there is a process of impeachment, and that's what should be used. And two, you just can't interfere with someone conducting the work of the president. And there is another, there's a difference there, because Richard Nixon actually did, in addition to his crimes, didn't actually pay attention to policy and politics and to getting things done. He passed EPA. He created the EPA. He passed Title IX. He opened China. I mean, he was busy doing the people's work. So you didn't want to interfere with his conduct of the office. And so there's some argument against a sitting president, but not when a sitting president is threatening democracy, not when a sitting president is committing crimes in your face. I think you have to act on that. And certainly, once he's an ex-president, he has no special powers, no special rights. And if that is improved by Judge Cannon's awful decision, which everyone ridiculed, giving him special powers because he used to be the president, that's ridiculous.
I agree. And so when you look at everything we know about Merrick Garland, the institutionalist, the guy, he's, federal judge, DOJ, if the only potential charge against Donald Trump that he can make is obstruction of justice regarding Mar-a-Lago documents, not even trying to obstruct Congress, not even defrauding the United States, not even inciting, in your heart, do you think that Merrick Garland goes the grand jury to get the indictment of Donald Trump for that just one charge?
I do. I don't see how he can avoid it. I'm not agreeing with you that that's the only charge that he.
No, I'm saying, because we had a debate on that point.
On the hypothetical that that's the only one, I would say it's certainly the low-hanging fruit. It's really an easy case to make and falls within proving all the elements of that particular crime And that goes not just to the classified documents, which raises the crime to a different level if you're stealing classified documents that could endanger the national security. But, the Federal Records Act the Presidential Records Act was passed because Richard Nixon tried to go away with documents. He wanted to get a tax deduction for donating them, and then he wanted to take it. He did the same thing. They're mine. I get to take them. And the government went, no, no. And then they passed the Presidential Records Act to make it absolutely clear that these were part of our history, that it was important for historians and politicians, and not politicians, but for journalists, and I guess politicians too, to understand what the administration had done and not done, and to be able to reveal it in historical perspective. So that's why they passed the law, and that covers anything, all the things that he bunched up and threw down the toilet, all the things that he ripped up. Those are all destroyed presidential records, and it violates the Presidential Records Act. Now, does that need to be amended to make clear that it is got criminal enforcement potential? Yes, it does. But that doesn't mean you haven't violated it just because it doesn't have criminal penalties.
With the fact that the recent reporting that from the DOJ, they were asking Trump's lawyers about, give us everything, suggesting in a way he might still have documents. Does there come a point where DOJ should get a search warrant to go to Bedminster Golf Course, essentially his summer home?
Again, they would have to have enough evidence to convince a judge, not just, look, he did it there. We probably think he did it also at Bedminster and at Trump Tower. They would have to have some employee or some moving company that says, well, we delivered a lot of boxes to Bedminster, or the
Right.
casket company that says, hey, he wanted to be alone with his divorced wife before we closed the casket. And then he closed it himself. Well, that might be a suspicious thing that would make you want to look there too. But you have to be able to persuade a judge that you deserve a search warrant because it's likely that evidence of a crime would be at that particular place. So you can't just say, gee, I think there's stuff missing. It must be somewhere.
Right.
You can't search unless you have a specific place.
I wonder where he's hiding this stuff. I have no idea what he's done to it. So, let's shift gears a little bit. The Supreme Court today, during the middle of this hearing, so it was not a good day for Trump on any front, they just rejected the emergency request from Trump's lawyers to intervene in the dispute over the special master and the documents that DOJ got from the August 8th search warrant. So Supreme Court shut him down again. As a practical matter, is this meaningful? And even taking a step back, is it meaningful in the big picture where Trump thinks, I appointed these people and they're going to help me out, and they've ruled against them again?
And it is, again, this is not the first time. It does show that even this Supreme Court, which has gone well beyond the bounds of what is expected behavior for the Supreme Court, that even this court will act in accordance with what is so obviously the law. It is a narrow decision. I don't want people listening to this to think that it was like a total shutdown. This only had to do with the classified documents and whether they had to be given to the special master to review, and that the federal government couldn't use them until the special master reviewed them. And keep in mind, the special master said he could finish everything by October 15th. And the judge said, oh, no. Donald Trump wants more time, and I'm going to give him more time. You have till well after the midterms. You have until December.
That's Judge Cannon. That's the Trump appointee who's auditioning in Judicial Idol. Try to move up to the U.S. Court of Appeals by helping Donald Trump out and hope he wins. So you touched on the New York AG case here with Tish James. They filed court papers today. Again, so much going on.
Yes.
You have to, folks, by just listening to my show, you could probably pass the bar in most states. We talk about the law so much. So today, she filed, New York AG Tish James' office filed papers to stop Trump from transferring assets, because this is stunning, folks. Days before that lawsuit came down, that big state fraud case, which they knew was about to happen, he formed a new corporation in Delaware called Trump Organization. And so they believe that he's going to move his assets to there to shield him from her lawsuit. Just, I mean, putting the action aside, his conduct, doesn't this scream out to you as a former prosecutor, like, come on, are you kidding? You think we're that dumb?
It screams out absolutely as being fraud, deliberate fraud to do this. And she's right to try to stop it. He was so brazen because he not only registered in Delaware, he's trying to register in New York under the same name as he's creating this new company. To me, that is, that goes to my husband's comment about his ego and his brazenness, that he would appear to testify in the same way that, hey, let's just change the name and do it in New York again. And then they can't get it. Well, yeah, you can pierce the corporate veil, I believe, to find when someone is doing it's sort of like if you're in bankruptcy and you transfer it to your wife and your children. No, it's too late. You can't do that. So I don't think he'll get away with it, but it does show a lot about his character.
It does. And he has lawyers who legally they can make a good faith argument here. Last thing, talking about lawyers, we learned that Christina Bobb, who was Trump's lawyer, who was just called in to certify that they gave all the documents, going back to Mar-a-Lago, that she was called in by Evan Corcoran, I guess Boris Epstein, to come on into Mar-a-Lago and certify that we gave all the documents to the DOJ. And then she signs it, and Evan Corcoran tells her, oh, we searched. So where does the criminal liability end in all this? Like if Trump told Evan Corcoran, hey, yeah, I searched everywhere, and they're still on his desk like they were, is Trump potentially on the hook criminally there for obstruction? Like where does it begin and end?
Well, it certainly, you have to just follow the chain. So as I understand it, she signed saying, I am informed. So the question is, who informed you? She isn't saying I have personal knowledge. She was saying, I'm told. And so that's actually good lawyering and protects her a little bit. But then she has to say who told her. And then if you're right, and it's Evan, and Evan then says, well, the president told me, and I just repeated it to her. So then Evan may be off the hook, but it sure points the finger at the president. And unless he can come forward and say, well, I dispatched 3 people to do it and they reported that they couldn't find anything, then they're on the hook. So, it only took the FBI a few hours to find what he had weeks and months to find. So I think it's not looking good for Donald Trump, because who else could have possibly said there was a thorough search?
And that they found documents in his office, the 45 office there in Mar-a-Lago. It's not like it was hidden. So, well, Jill, thank you so much for being on. I know you're on TV today talking about this, and thanks for making some time with us here. I appreciate it. And check out Jill's podcast, Sisters-in-Law and iGen Politics. I look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Talk to you later, Dean.
Take care.